I just found out about this recently, and we were told by ABR and players with a lot of influence over the ADV community that we would get a survey about Speed Pass soon. And for those that are wondering, like for context, for those that don't play a lot of ADV or haven't played a lot of ADV in a while, a Speed Pass has become an issue again, as it always has been. And there's been tons of optimization of particularly Ninjask. Now, for those that know or don't know, Ninjask was considered a joke when the new rules came into place in 2022. Like, people thought that Ninjask was completely dead because Ninjask's old niche with the 3-pass rules was sword stance, being able to set up sword stance, and then it gets the +1 with speed automatically, and then it would pass that to a very powerful physical attacker, so Metagross, Snorlax, Tyranitar, so on and so forth, Flygon. It was a pretty powerful late game strat, but a lot of people thought the strat kind of died when it did die, because you could no longer do that as reliably, and the only SD passer in the meta now is Sword Stance Pass Celebi, and Sword Stance Pass Celebi is very, very, very flawed, and the teams that it ends up on are very, very, very flawed and are very prone to disruption, which is a flaw that Ninjask has. But the thing about Ninjask, unlike all of the other baton passers, like Calm Mind Pass Celebi, SD Pass Celebi, some of the more niche Calm Minders like Espeon, which doesn't really get used. Lunatone does get used sometimes for that. But all of those have very, very established counterplay, whether that be explode, booms, fire types, Aerodactyl, Skarmory, very, very offensive Suicune that just boosts on you and then just threatens whatever comes in. There's a lot of counterplay to that, whereas something like Ninjask, damaging Ninjask directly isn't really going to be something that you're going to be able to do, because Ninjask has base 140 speed, so it outruns everything in the tier. And even without investment, the only things that outrun it are Dugtrio, Aerodactyl, Jolteon. If it uses Protect, it doesn't matter. It protects, it gets the +1 speed boost, and then it's faster than all of them. Or it runs very, 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 just a bit of speed investment with a plus speed nature, and it just outruns them. Meaning that a lot of Ninjas can invest in bulk, so... And when it is completely... it's completely invested in bulk, it actually could take an impressive number of hits. I think it could take Ice Beam from Pursuit Tar or something like that, or Blissey. Something pretty impressive. But even if Ninjask it wasn't able to take a hit, it wouldn't really matter, right? Because it's so fast. So the new strat with Ninjask is basically to substitute and to protect until you get whatever number of speed, and pass to something that's really, really, really annoying, or something that's just going to win the game outright. And the very obvious counterplay to this would just be to use phasers, right? To just bring a phaser every game. There's problems with that, obviously. And in fact, that was kind of the argument that people had with Mr. Mime, but it turns out that being your only counterplay meant that Mr. Mime could just completely shit on you, and there's nothing you could do. And that's the biggest problem with Ninjask, is that the counterplay is as simple as have Roar. And if you have Roar, congratulations, Ninjask will never pass if you have a Roar Swampert or whatever. Here's the problem. When the game comes down to you either having that Roar user and winning automatically, and not having a Roar user, and the odds very much being stacked up against you, that's not, even if it isn't like overpowered or whatever, it's bullshit. It is complete bullshit. It should not be in the meta. That type of thing should not be present at all, in my opinion. I don't think that is a very healthy dynamic for ADV, especially because ADV is a tier celebrated for not having the same issues that tiers like Black and White have. You know, in Black and White, you can make a perfectly sound balanced team. You know, like Psy Spam. And Psy Spam is absolutely amazing. The only problem is you get dicked on by Volcarona. And you get dicked on by Volcarona so hard that if it shows up in late game and, you know, you're like outpositioned, you're fucked. You're absolutely fucked and you lose. And that is a perfectly sound archetype. That archetype is very good. It is seeing tons of competitive success in that tier throughout the years. And how it's actually the way how I hit 1600 on the Black and White ladder the very first time was with Psy Spam Sand. And I recognized pretty immediately that playing around Volcarona was pretty difficult, if not impossible in some situations. But that's more of like a tier issue, right? You know, there isn't really too much that those type of generations can really do about it because it's so prevalent and so it happens so often the higher up you go in the generations. Like Gen 6 onward, this happens more and more and more often. It not just the OUs either. This happens in lower tiers as well. But in advance, this like never happens, and that's seen as a good thing. We don't want that because that is a negative of a tier if that happens. People don't like situations where there is literally nothing that you could do, right? And even if there is like a situation where there's nothing you could do, like let's just say you're loading like an ABR Celebi Blissey Arrow team. That team gets absolutely mauled by Salic Heracross, right? Like Salic Heracross completely shreds it to pieces. But the thing is that that's the type of thing that Heracross is supposed to do. It is supposed to completely tear through sandless shit. And those type of teams are going to be vulnerable to Heracross, and a lot of times people bring it knowing that Heracross itself is flawed because of like Mega Horn accuracy and its defensive typing not being the best in the world. But there's actual opportunity costs to using Heracross. Heracross is a flawed Pokemon. It doesn't at all, you know, no one has ever looked at Heracross and said to themselves, man, this Salic Heracross is bullshit, right? No one has ever looked at something like DD Tar and said, wow, this thing just swept through the endgame, this must be overpowered. No one is really thinking that, because if you set up a situation where your DD Tar is going to sweep, then, you know, that's it, right? You have to set up that situation to happen. And even then, your opponent still has outs to it, to Dragon Dance Tyranitar, and every team in the metagame should have outs to DD Tar, right? The same thing could be said about Heracross. A lot of Spikes teams do have to consider Heracross because it's so strong. And not having an out to Heracross basically means you lose the game sometimes. And those type of team, like those spikeless, sandless teams, do not have a lot of like outs to Heracross, if any at all, right? So it's natural that those teams. It's fine to be weak to something, right? However, every team in the metagame can account for stuff to a reasonable degree in advance. Everything, like, there is never a point where you build and think to yourself, man, I can't account for this without being weak to this. Man, I'm fucked, right? Again, it's not like Black and White, where these type of situations genuinely do exist in Black and White like team building. But by the way, I'm not slandering Black and White at all. I think it is an amazing tier that is super, super, super overhated. And I'm actually going to make a separate video discussing why I think this is the case, and why I think people who hate on Alderán's proposal I think all of that is bullshit too. Which I know is a hot take, defending Alderán's proposal, but again, that is a topic for another video. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe we should actually read the text on screen. I feel like I've been ranting for like 8 or 9 minutes. All right. So this was posted by Star, and it reads as follows. As the title indicates, we have had this topic come up in various discussions made a truly ludicrous... I'm messing up reading it, sorry. Truly ludicrous amount of times. The most recent BP relation shenanigans have mainly involved ninjas passing speed boosts, paired with texts like swagger, sand attack, or toxic. Now, I did cut myself off earlier where I was talking about accounting for stuff and it being reasonable. The reason why something like Ninjask is considered unreasonable is because teams shouldn't have to just pack a phasing move or potentially have a massive game-losing potential disadvantage against Speed Pass. And the reason why it isn't as simple as use a phasing move is because there's so many teams out there. I'm actually going to pull up Pokemon Showdown for this to bring up my point, because I do think that this is relevant. A lot of teams cannot run phasing moves without compromising their offense in some way, right? In fact, to point to a user like Ferdazi is a player that doesn't use phasing moves at all, that doesn't use teams that really have phasing moves, and he's able to pressure stuff like SD Pass, Celebi, Calm Minds, all of that with just offensive pressure. H-Clat is another player who does that, who doesn't really run a lot of phasing moves on his teams, and he's able to pressure stuff with direct offensive pressure, right? Like, take a team like this, for example. This is a Ferdazi team, right? I mean, it's got a few changes to it, obviously, like the taunt lead Skarmory. But, like, a team like this, what's going to run a phasing move? And this is a perfectly fine team. This is a very, very, very good team. It is very reliable. It's very good at like putting on offensive pressure to both defense and offensive teams alike. But outside of Skarmory, what Pokemon, like, am I going to run Parasong on Celebi? There's massive opportunity costs. What, I'm going to use Choice Band, Whirlwind, Aerodactyl? No one is doing that. No one is doing that, right? And let's, take a team like, say, this, right? So this is a BKC team. This is a team that he used in SPL against Sadly Sias. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And again, this is a perfectly sound team. You got the Wish, Salamence, the Pursuit Tar. Now, any one of these Pokemon could run a phasing move, by the way. It's just the team that BK... This is as authentic as I tried to make his team. And this is what the team is, right? And again, this is another team where you can't really, put a phasing move on something without opportunity cost. Like, if you could put it on, like, Hariyama, right? Just slot it over Rock Slide. But again, there's opportunity costs there. Having Rock Slide is nice if Hariyama wants to break the subs of something like Sub Zapdos. And of course, Whirlwind helps with that, obviously, but Rock Slide also allows you to directly pressure stuff like Gengar, because otherwise you're walled by Gengar if you don't have Rock Slide as well. Now, you do have the Pursuit Tar, and a Celebi. And you could say, oh, well, maybe something like Zapdos isn't that bad because you could deal with it just fine with Tar, Celebi, and Claydol. And Whirlwind helps with like Calm Mind stuff as well, like Celebi. But again, this team doesn't really have spikes either, so it's not as if the stuff like Celebi or Jirachi every time they're coming in are getting worn down by spikes or whatever, and then you can hit them with Whirlwind, and then they have to come in again and take like 12.5%, right? Again, there is actual opportunity cost to not using this, because again, you're running a phasing move on a team that doesn't have like a lot of passive damage. You know, you could run it on Tar, but then you have to give up like a coverage move, right? You know, having something like HP Grass could be very useful, or like Ice Beam or Fire Blast. Being able to hit Metagross with Fire Blast is really nice sometimes. So again, I don't think that this is a healthy dynamic to have in the tier, where Ninjask, as long as this opportunity cost thing exists, Ninjask exists as a thing that punishes that. And I don't really think that is a healthy thing in the tier, to punish it to such a degree, I mean, because if you have a phasing move, Ninjask, there isn't a lot that Ninjask could do, right? Or like having more than one phaser, I should say, because if you have like two phasers, then you'll be fine usually. But even then, sometimes it isn't enough, depending on who the phasers are. It isn't as simple as putting Roar on Jolteon or putting Roar on Offku, and you will immediately beat Ninjask. That's not what's going to happen, especially at high level, where high-level players are going to build their teams around the notion that those sort of offensive Pokemon might carry moves. They will account for stuff like Roarcoon. They will account for stuff like Roar Zap. They will account for these things. Good players aren't stupid, so even if these things show up, it doesn't just mean the Jask user is going to instantly lose, right? So even in this hypothetical where you bring like a phasing move, it might not be enough because of this. Swagger, Sand Attack, and Toxic. Now, there might be some people in the comments that are like, Darth Tyros, why is Ninjask using Sand Attack? That's stupid. So here's the thing. Ninjask does not need to use a turn to get its speed, right? Because it has speed boost, so it gets its speed every turn. And sometimes what people will do with offensive teams, if they have like a Suicune without a phasing move or something like that, they will go into like their Suicune and they'll start setting up alongside the Ninjask. So whatever comes in has to face the phaser of your the sweeper of your own, and they might actually just get overwhelmed to the point where they won't be able to safely set up in front of like this +2 Suicune or whatever. But these disruption tools like Swagger completely throw that out of the window, right? If you Swagger like Suicune and then it hits itself, that's like a free substitute that it gets. If it hits itself and it's able to baton pass the substitute, that means whatever's coming in comes in completely for free, right? Sand Attack is the same principle, but it's a lot funnier because the normal counterplay to Sand Attack, and the main reason why it isn't really an issue in any other gen or any other context, is because you're able to switch out. Well, you don't really want to switch out of Ninjask because Ninjask is going to get a free substitute, and keep in mind, it gets more speed as it just sits there, and then it's going to get a free baton pass, meaning you basically gave the baton passer a completely free turn, which you never want to do, right? You never want to do that. You would never want to do something like that with like an SD Pass Celebi. You wouldn't just want SD Pass Celebi to pass the Aerodactyl for free or whatever. The same principle exists here. You don't want to give this shit a free turn. Well, what if it uses these luck-based moves and there's literally nothing you could do? The counterplay that previously did exist, where you were able to offensively pressure Ninjask, you can no longer do that because you either hit yourself or you miss Ice Beam or whatever, and then they just pass to like Heracross or Breloom, and then they might just win the game right there because Heracross outspeeds everything, Breloom outspeeds everything, and then that's it. Or you know, they pass to like a belly drummer like Hariyama. Hariyama's got like a bunch of bulk, and then it just belly drums, and then it outspeeds everything. Boom, 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 boom. You're dead, right? Or Ursing, which is a very, very, very niche Pokemon. Ursing SDs, and then it's just poised to just tear through everything because it's so strong, especially with a Swords Dance. But even top level players have been experimenting with stuff like Toxic, meaning something like Suicune. You know, if sand is present or something like that, boom, it's getting worn down over time, right? It's not going to be able to spam roar forever. It gets toxic. It's going to have to rest at some point. Swampert, you know, if it doesn't have refresh, it's ruined forever. That means that the physical attackers on the Ninja's team could very easily take advantage of that, right? So, again, it's the same principle. Right? I don't think that this is a thing that should exist at ADV. But let us continue. The last time we made a decision on BP, we were extremely clear that the next time that this came up, we would only be considering severe measures, banning Speed Pass, banning Stat Pass, or banning Baton Pass as a whole. We firmly believe we will be firmly sticking to this, and any other incremental bans will not be considered and shouldn't be discussed here. So this is incredibly, incredibly important. If anybody has paid attention to like my activity in Discord or on the forums, you know that I've recently been clamoring for a Speed Pass ban. That Speed Pass needs to be banned. It needs to be wiped out of ADV forever. And some people might think that's jarring because I was initially voting for just Ninjask and Swagger to be banned. And Swagger is a problem in Advanced. Not just because of Ninjask, but the potential to be broken elsewhere, right? And the council, you know, I asked a bunch of council members, and they basically gave me the same response. They are not going to do anything about Ninjask. They are sticking to their guns, and they are going to hard ban Speed Pass or nothing. That's it. So this changes everything, right? The fact that we know that they aren't going to bend the knee, that they aren't going to change anything. This is it. It's either Speed Pass or nothing. And that's a really big deal for some people, because there are a lot of people that enjoy stuff like DD Pass, like Smeargle, that like Agility Pass, Zapdos, Salic Pass, Vaporeon. Those are seen as like honest, like Speed Pass strategies. I do think that those also have the potential to be broken and ridiculous too. So I'm not entirely on the same boat, but I understand it. I understand why people don't want that stuff banned. Personally, I don't think Smeargle should be able to Baton Pass. That's the only other thing that I would disagree with. I don't think DD Pass Smeargle should be allowed, because it's the same shit as Ninjask. It puts you to sleep, and then it DDs or whatever, and then you have to deal with it in a completely different way. It's kind of like the same way how Umbreon was in GSC. Either Umbreon did its little stall pursuit bullshit, or it did its mean look pass thing, which gave Umbreon completely different counterplay entirely, right? It meant that you had to deal with it completely differently. And I don't think that should exist in ADV. I don't think, because the normal counterplay to something like Smeargle is to you sleep sack something and then you go into something that outspeeds it, right? Because Smeargle sits at 274 speed. It's above Heracross. It's above Heracross, but it's like slower than Moltres. It's slower than Venusaur. So it's relatively fast, but not like the fastest thing in the metagame, right? It's outsped by Arrow, it's outsped by Zapdos, it's outsped by all of the 328 Pokemon, so Salamence, Jirachi, Celebi, so on, Dugtrio. But with DD, the whole going into the faster Pokemon thing isn't really going to do nothing no more, unless you have Salamence. Salamence has really solid counterplay because of Intimidate, right? But that's more of like an exception. If you were expecting Aerodactyl to come in and stop it from spiking and it DDs, you're in for a rude awakening, because now you have to switch out of Aerodactyl into the facing Pokemon. And the facing it's a very messy situation a lot of the time. And plus, Smeargle is Smeargle, and it could just use stuff like Taunt. So even if you have a Phaser it just taunts you, and it's just like, oh yeah, fuck you, I'm just gonna DD again, or I'm just gonna do this, or I'm just gonna do that, right? So nothing is really guaranteed. Again, it's the same principle. I don't know why people have double standards for this stuff. But let us continue. This thread is mainly open to the discussion on what the next steps should be for ADV to address the latest issues of Baton Pass. The only pass forwards up for discussion are Speed Pass, Stat Pass, and Baton Pass as a whole, or do nothing. If any of these three get enacted, it would also come with removing the one stat passer per team clause that is currently in place. So again, this is very, 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 very important. Now, they don't elaborate on this too much, but this is still extremely important because the current rules state that you can only pass one stat every game. But this implies that if we were to ban Speed Pass, it means that 3 pass might be able to come back, meaning that we could do stuff like armor acid, or acid armor plus Calm Mind Pass, or like Amnesia Pass plus Swords Dance Pass, or like Iron Defense Pass. That opens the door for a lot of like really cool and creative stuff, and I am interested to see what the council would do with this. And this is actually something that I've been suggesting a lot on Discord that they do, and it's actually one of the bigger positives that come from a Speed Pass ban. You know, it isn't all just negative. It isn't just taking stuff away. And there are consequences to Speed Pass being banned, like stuff like Marowak is going to get completely knocked out of the meta. Ursing, you aren't really going to be seeing too much anymore, unfortunately, but that is the consequence of banning stuff. There is going to be collateral. And yeah, stuff like Salic Pass of Warion would no longer exist. Zapdos wouldn't be able to agility pass anymore. It would still be able to use agility, which is very good still, because outrunning Aerodactyl, outrunning whatever, still really good. And hold on a second. I got a text from somebody on Discord. And yeah, again, there is negatives and positives to this, but again, it is not just all negatives, right? There are things to take away from this, and I do think that being the case, I do think that people should be more open to this, especially because what we've already talked about is unhealthy, right? It might be, again, one of the biggest arguments against banning Speed Pass, or like the two biggest arguments that I see, is that one, it isn't very consistent, it isn't very good, and the other is, people that say, oh, it's not that bad, I use it sometimes and I don't think it's that good, which I think both arguments are very weak, personally. The first argument, being that it's not very strong, is untrue, because people at top level recently have been using it at top level for games that matter. People have been winning games at top level with these kind of teams, with these kind of strategies. If they were very, very weak strategies, people would not be using them, especially top level players. Top level players do not mess with bad Pokemon, bad strategies. They don't do that shit. They use shit that wins the game, and this stuff has been winning games. And not even just people at top level. Like, there are plenty of people on the advanced ladder right now that have gotten very, very, very high ELO rankings of just using Speed Pass. In fact, there's a user called Peace that recently hit the top of ladder with just using a Speed Pass team. So again, this proves that these teams aren't gimmicky and bad. These are teams that are good at high level. These are teams that are good against the current metagame. And it's very, very strong. And because it is strong, it means that it's going to be... the more unhealthy aspects of the strategy are going to impact a lot of people who play against it. There's going to be a lot of people put in positions where there's literally nothing that they can do. There's going to be people who lack the tools, and there are a lot of teams that don't have phasing moves. And again, I don't think a battle should come down to I have a phasing move or I lose. And also, for those people that defend this shit, I gotta ask, wasn't this the exact same argument that you people were using when before Mr. Mime got banned, that we should all just use Whirlwind Skarmory and just move on, that we should all use Roar Tyranitar and move on? Isn't this the same shit? I digress. And the other is that it's not that, it's not that bad. It's fun for me. I don't mind it, right? Here's the thing. Fun is very, very subjective, right? If you're the guy that's using Speed Pass, it's going to be fun for you, I'd imagine, because like the whole gimmick is to use a strategy that basically lets you set up situations where you instantly win. It's basically setting up the instant win condition over and over and over and over and over again until you win. And I could see how that is fun to use. I've had fun using it on ladder, right? But again, fun is subjective. If you don't mind going against Speed Pass or potentially being cheesed by it, that doesn't mean that everybody else should just shake hands with the Speed Pass guy and be like, you know what? I agree. I don't mind Suicune getting a speed boost and completely destroying me. I don't mind Braylon coming in and it outspeeding everything and making it to where there's absolutely nothing that I can do in response to it. I'm perfectly fine with that, sir. No. If you are the exception to this, that's fine, right? You are made of sterner stuff. But the rest of us that don't like going against this and don't like the fact that it feels uninteractive, or don't like the fact that you're put into a lot of situations that there's nothing that you could do, we don't like that. And there are some people that are going to compare this to special offense. There are going to be some people that think that I am a hypocrite because I use a style that runs by a lot of the same principles. Here's the thing, though. Special offense has a lot of flaws of its own, and there are a lot of teams that it targets, and a lot of those teams are balanced teams, right? They're kind of similar to what Ninjask targets, but Ninjask actually prefers the spikeless stuff, right? Whereas something like Special Offense likes the spikes balanced teams. They like the sort of teams that rely on like a few special walls here and some hard Special Offense wants to go against that, whereas something like Speed Pass has completely different targets. But and I agree. I'm not going to completely disagree with that. But I would also argue that something like I feel like a lot of top players don't mind special offense, and a lot of the people that have issues with it are people that use teams that have a very hard time of playing around it, or haven't used the style itself, or they haven't properly learned how to play around it. Where something like Ninjask, it doesn't really matter if you know how to play around it, or you have the tools. All it really matters is if you have the tools to have a very good advance against it or not. If you don't have the tools for it, you lose. Or there's a very good chance that you might lose. If you do have the tools for it, the chips are in your corner. But again, is that really a healthy aspect of the metagame? Where no matter your skill level, no matter what you do, you might auto-win or auto-lose? I am asking any detractors of the whole Speed Pass ruling and what's going on, I must ask you, do you think that this is a good thing to have in this metagame? Do you think that this should exist in a metagame that is celebrated for its balance and for the lack of these things existing? I just want to put that out there, right? I personally don't think it should exist. I personally think that a strategy like this should honestly be gone from ADV. And again, I don't think all of Stat Pass should be banned. In fact, I think that is a very, very, very terrible idea, and it would ruin the tier if he did that. I think Calm Mind Pass should exist. I think Defensive Stat Pass should exist. I think SD Pass should exist, because these have all of these passes have very reasonable counterplay. It's very, very reasonable to play around it. You could develop a very, very straightforward, reasonable game plan to playing around these strategies, right? Where something like Speed Pass, it doesn't matter, right? It really does not matter. As long as the opponent plays in the way that they're supposed to, it doesn't matter if you really make the optimal moves or not. If they make all of the optimal moves that they have to make, you lose, right? No matter what. And I just, again, I'm starting to repeat myself. Anyway, let us read the rest of this off. So, the council is currently inclined towards a Speed Pass ban as a solution, but we are, of course, open to the community input. As you could expect a survey in the near future on this topic. Please limit discussion in this thread to the topics mentioned. Things like Swagger will be looked at separately, and I will make a separate video on Swagger and why it should be banned. And a parallel to this, but that is a completely separate issue. Alright. So what is my takeaway of this? Speed Pass should be banned. I don't think there really is even a discussion here. I think I've brought up all of the negatives and the positives to this. I think the positives of banning Speed Pass way overweigh the negatives. And I think a lot of the negatives is confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is basically you agree with something that lines up with your beliefs at the time. I feel like a lot of people have a confirmation bias about Speed Pass. A lot of people that don't play against it a lot or are ignorant of Speed Pass even and haven't really played against the more optimal versions of it might not hold an opinion at all, and they don't hold an opinion at all because they don't know what it's like going against it. Or there are people who biased, who use these strategies and who like these strategies to be in place because they like using them, which is a natural thing. If you like using something in a video game, you don't want it to be nerfed, right? I mean, to give a good example of like a completely different game, Star Wars Battlefront 2015, Dengar was a really strong character when he released. And he was able to do some really crazy shit, like one-shot Luke Skywalker. He fucking insta-melted all of the other heroes. And I was really sad when he got nerfed to the ground, because he was a really strong character, and I grew to really like playing as that character. But would I be against him being nerfed if it meant that the game got way better if he did? No, I would not be against that. I am 100% for, like, if the game overall improves from it being gone, I am all for it. And I feel like the same for Speed Pass. I feel the game could really only improve if we take action against this. And yes, there will be some strategies that are lost, but you know, if I have to take using Ursing or the metagame overall being better, I'm going to go with the metagame being better overall. And if you guys have made it this far in the video, I encourage you guys to be active in this issue. I encourage everybody to be very proactive on the forums, to vote for a Speed Pass ban, for the council to take action against this. I encourage everybody to do what they can to make sure that this goes through, right? That's how I feel, and this is why this video is going to exist. I want people to watch this and go away thinking, yes, you know, I'm going to miss whatever Speed Pass exists, or you aren't going to miss it at all. But the meta is going to be better. And again, there are positives that come with this. Again, you know, them giving us more Speed Pass, or hell, they might even bring back Full Pass, which would be awesome. But that's all I have to say on this for now. If you enjoyed this video, like it. I encourage you guys to engage in the comments. If you guys want to have any discussions with me, you could do so in the comments, or you can DM me on Discord. I'm in all of the big ADV servers. Like, I'm in the ADV Com server, I'm in the Mushi League server, so on. I'm in ADV Revival. I'm in all of those, so it's really easy to find my username and contact me. I'm going to leave the thread in question in the description. I will link this into the description. And so you guys can actively discuss in this forum page and make sure that this Speed Pass ban goes through. So without further ado, I'm going to fuck off. I'm gone. See you guys later.